Music is always there for you.
As is the barbell.
And the bar, yeah, totally, dude.
Yeah.
Work on you.
Yep.
Anyway, so what did I want to say? First thing is the blues scale. So a good way to practice this, old school, traditional, up and down. You have C, E flat, F, F sharp, and then G, B flat. Again, what that means is any C on the piano, always going to be good. All the E flats, all the Fs, all the F sharps, all the Gs, all the B flats. To practice it up and down, it's awkward. The blues scale is sort of it's a confection. It's sort of just this thing that happened. So it's not, it doesn't flow very well, but it's good for you because you have to figure out how to do things like that. So to practice it, play it in cluster chords, which means all at the same time. So I have C, E flat, F, and F sharp together. My pinky's out here, and then I go over here to just G and B flat. So it's super, for an OCD person like me, it's unbalanced and it just freaks me out. But if you do this, play the cluster chords up and down. That gets you to, this is how I practice scales as well. This, like if I was going to do C major, you do the first three, C, D, E, and then F, G, A, B, up and down the keyboard. If you do that, then when you go to play the scale, your brain thinks in clusters as opposed to one note at a time. So you can see my hand is just going to be moving very comfortably to, I'm not thinking F sharp, oh shit, what's the next one? Was it E? No. Was it F? I'm just going, my hand knows where to go. So we're building our muscle memory. And we'll talk about getting the thumb under as well. That's a whole other discussion, but basically it goes like that. But you gotta think about it. Anyway. So you practice that up and down if you want to. Another good thing to do, playing a scale up and down is just the first step. That's just figuring out what it basically looks like and understanding the pattern. Then once you do that, try to do some different patterns. Like do the whole thing with C on the bottom. This is going to help not only with the pattern, but getting it into your ear, what all the different notes sound like, what the different note combinations sound like. And that's what we're doing more than anything when we're learning all this stuff. Then start on E flat. Same scale. So it helps you to memorize it. It takes it out of context that you're familiar with. Start on F. Still, whatever it is. Do all of those, then start up here. C, up here. E flat. F. And that'll help when you're improvising, you'll start to see where these things start, where the licks start. You know, if I'm gonna go I know this little section of the scale because I've practiced that little section of the scale. It starts to get into your brain. Or if I went like this, you know, I'm in this section of the scale, this section of the scale. Anyway, think about the patterns. Think about any way that you can break it up. Just mathematically, mechanically at first. Don't have to think too musically when you're just figuring out what it is. I used to do that with all my scales, like with a C major scale, it's easier to see. Like the C blues scale is a little bit abstract. It's sort of, because it's got this little cluster here and like these big gaps, it's harder to do patterns, but like with a major scale, I would go up and down and then I would skip notes. Right? And then skip 2 notes. Skip 3 notes, like this. Things like that. Do any kind of pattern that you could think of. You could do 3s. Do do that for hours, and every key, every scale that I had to learn, I had to do it like that, because that's really, it starts to really make sense to your brain. Your brain starts to be able to just think about it. It's kind of amazing. So then, after you do all that, think about these licks. Now, there's on this solo, there's probably 6 legitimate things that you can do. First thing, right? That's a lick. I want you to memorize that first, and then play it. One way to help you memorize it would be to play it over the whole blues form. Feels like, what it sounds like, and where it goes. And as you repeat it like that, you get good at playing the lick, and then it gets ingrained in your brain, so that when you hear that, when you're just playing, you go, what should I play? And then you'll hear it, and you go, oh, I can play that. Fits in with that part of your solo that you're creating. You do it up here. Right? The piano's only 12 notes. That's another thing. You can play, if a lick sounds good here, it's going to sound good here. It's going to sound good here. So move around. That's another variation that you can do. We're talking about variations. Then I'll come back to that variation, but then the next lick on here. Right? It's from measure 12 to whatever that is. You do the math. But it starts, and on the page it starts when you go to the F chord. Right? But do it for a whole chorus. Just start. I really know that lick, right? And I know how it sounds in context, right? And then there's this one. How about this? So what I'm trying to show you is there's a lot of different concepts that we'll talk about, but this particular concept, this is a blues scale. Our blues scale, these notes work over the entire progression. No matter where you are, these chords are changing. In the future, you're going to change licks with the chord progression. Like in Chicken Shack, this is in C, this lick. That's why there's so many notes outside of the blues scale in that one. And then when we go to the F here, guess what? We go to F here. So we have, things are much more strict. You have to line up. And this lick, that's a G major chord. So it has to fit with the G major. That's why that lick works. But we're not talking about that. We're just talking about this catch-all thing called the blues scale, which is an academic construct. The early purveyors of the blues were not like, oh, this is our blues scale, and we are using the blues scale to create. They were not. They were just hearing it. They were feeling it. And then that's always how it happens in music. People play stuff, and then the theorists come afterwards. Except in classical music. That's a whole other thing.
It's just like art critics.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. Okay, so and then a couple of quick variation things. In this one, your first variation, instead of going like that, we're gonna go. We did that today. It's sort of like, you think about it's saying the same basic thing, but it's just a little bit different inflection. You know? So practice that over the whole thing. Get that in your system. Let's do another variation. This is, instead of doing like this, we were sliding, right? So I want you to go. Okay? So instead of, you're going. Okay? Same basic thing. Instead of, you're going. Right? Same notes, just a little bit of different flavor. Right? And then the next, so that's 2 variations for that leg. Then the next leg. Right? Instead of a G, I'm going to play an F sharp. So it's a little bit more blue. They call this a blue note, by the way, if you are curious. This is a blue note, which means dissonant. Right? So instead of more consonant, we're gone. It takes more confidence to play the out note, because it's like, yeah, I played that. You know what I mean? So that's your variation for that. And then a variation on the third one. What's this? Instead of B flat on top, we're going to do C. So it's the same thing except for a different note on top. Okay? Just gives it a little bit, it opens it up a little more. From this, we go up. You could go. And you can see, I'm just going to talk for a second. You can just listen or try it or whatever. Instead of doing this, right, you can go just like, it's the opposite of what we did on that first leg. So you can go, oh, sorry. That one you do have to slide. But, or, and then you can see how once you start to get that skill of being able to do that, of mixing and matching, your brain will just start doing it automatically. So, and on the spot. So I can go. Sorry. So, make sense? You kind of swap them. And it just leads, one thing leads to the other. That's what we're trying to do. When you memorize and learn a bunch of these licks, and then you memorize, learn how to do some variations, you'll be surprised at what you start to do. At first, it's really slow, and it takes a lot of time, and it hurts. But the more you learn, the more you do it, the easier it gets.